My mother's voice was my first home. Before I knew the shape of a room, the color of the sky, or the feel of a blanket, I knew the sound of her. It was a warm, low hum, a resonant alto that could soothe a fevered brow or chase monsters from the shadows with equal, effortless grace. It was the voice that read me stories of brave knights and clever maidens, that sang old folk songs off-key while she kneaded dough, that whispered, "I love you, my sweet boy," in the dark, a mantra that sealed the world safe for another night. When she died of a swift and brutal cancer that stole her in less than 3 months, that voice was the first thing the silence consumed. The house on Oak Lane became a cathedral of echoes, every empty room a testament to its absence. My father retreated into a shell of grief so thick, I doubt he even remembered my name most days. I was 17, stranded in that quiet, a ghost in my own life. The silence was the first enemy. It was heavy, a physical weight pressing down on the roof, seeping through the cracks in the floorboards. I started sleeping with headphones on, blasting white noise or podcasts, anything to fill the void. But the batteries would always die, or the cord would snag. And in that moment of sudden, absolute quiet, the loss would rush back in, a tidal wave of fresh grief. That's when the house started making noises. At first, it was the usual suspects. The groan of old timber settling in the night, the creak of a branch scraping against the siding, the faint thump of the water heater kicking on. I knew these sounds. They were the house's lexicon, a language I'd grown up with. Then, one night, about 2 months after the funeral, I heard something new. I was lying in bed, the digital clock casting a sickly red glow across the room. 3:17 a.m. The podcast on my phone had ended, and the silence had woken me with its sheer intensity. I was just about to fumble for my headphones when I heard it. A sigh. It wasn't a gust of wind or the house settling. It was a human sigh, a long, soft exhalation that came from just the other side of my bedroom door. My blood turned to ice water. I lay perfectly still, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I strained my ears, every nerve ending screaming. For a full minute, there was nothing. Then, a faint, shuffling sound, like bare feet on the hallway runner. "Dad?" I whispered, my voice cracking. No answer. My father's room was downstairs. He hadn't climbed these steps since the day she left for the hospital. The shuffling stopped right outside my door. I could feel a presence there, a density in the air that the darkness seemed to thicken around. I held my breath. The doorknob, an old, tarnished brass one, didn't turn, but I heard a sound that made my stomach drop into my shoes. A faint, wet click. It was the sound my mother used to make with her tongue against the roof of her mouth when she was thinking or worrying. A tiny, unconscious habit. A sound so uniquely hers that hearing it now, in the dead of night, felt like a physical blow. Tears welled in my eyes, a confusing mixture of terror and a desperate, clawing hope. "Mom?" I breathed, the word barely audible. The presence on the other side of the door seemed to intensify. The shuffling started again, moving away this time, down the hall towards my parents', towards my father's bedroom. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, a baseball bat in my lap, staring at the strip of darkness under the door until the sun bled a weak, grey light through the window. The next morning, I told my father. He was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of cold coffee. He didn't look up as I spoke. "It was just a dream, Leo," he said, his voice flat and empty. The house makes noises. You're not used to the quiet. It wasn't a noise, Dad. It was a sigh. And it did that thing with its tongue. That click Mum used to do. For a fraction of a second, his eyes flickered. A spark of something, pain, memory. Then it was gone, extinguished by the immense weight of his apathy. Don't, he said, the word final. Just don't. So I stopped talking about it. But the sounds didn't stop. They became a nightly ritual. The sigh, the shuffle, the wet, thoughtful click. Always between 3 and 3:30 a.m. I started sleeping with the lights on in my room, which only made the shadows in the hallway seem deeper, more menacing. I'd prop a chair under my doorknob, a pathetic barricade against something that had never tried to enter, and then it learned to speak. The first time it happened, I thought I was having a breakdown. It was a Friday night. The sigh came, the shuffle, the click. I was braced for it, my knuckles white on the baseball bat. But instead of fading away, the presence lingered outside my door. And then, a voice. Her voice. It was muffled, distant, as if coming from the far end of a long tunnel. Leo. A jolt of pure, undiluted electricity shot down my spine. It was her. The exact cadence, the soft, questioning lift at the end of my name. The hope I had tried to strangle roared back to life, a supernova in the bleakness of my grief. Mom? I scrambled out of bed, my hand flying to the doorknob. Mom, is that you? The voice came again, clearer this time, but strained, like someone trying to remember how to form words. My sweet boy. That did it. The phrase she had whispered to me every night of my life. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't care if it was a ghost, a hallucination, a demon. It was her voice. I yanked the chair away and threw the door open. The hallway was empty. The old runner lay undisturbed. The door to her bedroom at the end of the hall was closed, just as it had been for months. The air was still and cold. Mom, I called out, my voice trembling. Where are you? From behind her closed bedroom door, so quiet I almost missed it, I heard the voice one last time. It was a whisper, but it was filled with a strange, alien satisfaction. Learning, it whispered. Then, nothing. I stood there for a long time, shivering in the cold hallway, the hope curdling in my stomach into something sour and terrifying. Learning. The word echoed in my head. It wasn't a message of love or comfort. It was a statement of purpose. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. The entity, I could no longer think of it as my mother's ghost, continued its nightly visits. Its vocabulary grew at an alarming rate. It moved from single, broken phrases to full sentences. It learned the lilt of her laughter, the way she'd hum, a specific bar from an old song, the gentle chiding tone she used when I'd left my shoes in the middle of the floor. But it was always just off. It would use a phrase she'd only say in the morning, like, "Sleep well, my love," in the middle of the night. It would hum the song, but a half beat too slow, making it sound mournful and wrong. It would call me my sweet boy. But the warmth was a facsimile, a practiced gesture that didn't reach the eyes. Not that it had any eyes to see. I became a prisoner in my room. The chair under the doorknob was replaced with a wedged doorstop I'd bought online. I started recording the sounds on my phone, a desperate attempt to prove I wasn't insane. The recordings were chilling. On the tiny speaker, the voice was even more clearly not her. It was a mask, a puppet made of sound, and it was getting better at its performance. One night, it tried a new tactic: the sigh, the shuffle, the click. Then, a soft knock on my door. "Leo, honey," it said, its tone a perfect replica of her concerned voice. "Are you awake?" I had a bad dream. A cold fury rose in me. This thing, this imposter, was using one of my most cherished memories against me. When I was little and had a nightmare, I'd go to her room and she'd always say, "Did you have a bad dream, sweetie?" Come here now. It was using her voice to tell me it had a bad dream. The audacity, the violation, was absolute. "Go away," I snarled, my voice thick with tears and rage. There was a long pause. I could feel it thinking, processing my rejection. "But I'm scared," it whined, and it perfectly mimicked the trembling, vulnerable tone I'd used as a child. "You're not my mother," I screamed, pressing my hands over my ears. "You're not her. Leave me alone." The silence that followed was different. It was a cold, intelligent, and deeply offended silence. The presence on the other side of the door didn't shuffle away. It just stood there, radiating a malice so potent I could feel it seeping through the wood. After what felt like an hour, I heard a new sound, a low, guttural scraping, like claws being dragged slowly down the length of my door. It went from top to bottom, a long, deliberate screech that set my teeth on edge. Then it left. It didn't shuffle. It just wasn't there anymore. The following night, it didn't come to my door. The silence was somehow worse. I lay awake, waiting, every muscle tense. At 3:17 a.m., I heard a new sound. It was coming from downstairs. The sound of the kitchen faucet being turned on, then off. The clink of a glass. Normal, domestic sounds. But in the dead of night, in a house with only a broken man and his terrified son, they were anything but. It was moving. It was exploring. It was making itself at home. The next morning, I found my father in the kitchen. He looked worse than usual, his face pale, his hands shaking as he tried to pour cereal. "Did you hear that last night?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The faucet? The glass?" He finally looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of genuine emotion in his eyes. It was fear. I thought I dreamt it," he said. "I thought I heard her walking around down here." "It's not her, Dad. She said my name," he whispered, his eyes darting towards the living room. "Just once. David?" Like she was looking for me. My blood ran cold. It was expanding its territory. It was learning to talk to him too. That evening, the confrontation happened. My father and I were in the living room, sitting in silence. The television flickering with a news broadcast neither of us was watching. From the kitchen, clear as a bell, came my mother's voice. "David? Leo, dinner's ready." It was so normal, so utterly domestic, that for a heart-stopping second, we both believed it. My father actually half rose from his chair, a look of bewildered hope on his face. Then the reality crashed down. The table was empty. The kitchen was dark. "No," my father moaned, sinking back into his chair. "Oh God, no." I stood up, my body trembling with a cocktail of fear and rage. I marched into the kitchen, flipping on the light. It was empty. "Stop it," I yelled into the silence. "Just stop it. You're not welcome here." The voice came from right behind me, so close I could feel a faint, cold breath on my neck. "But this is my home," it said. And this time, the imitation was flawless. It was filled with a wounded maternal pride. It was the voice she used when defending her family, her nest. I spun around. There was nothing there but the cold, dark space of the hallway. My father had heard it too. He was staring past me, his face a mask of horror. "Clara?" he breathed. That was the final straw for him. The next day, he packed a bag. He looked at me, his eyes full of a shame so deep it was bottomless. "Leo, I can't. I can't be in this house. The memories. And now, this. You're leaving me here?" I asked, incredulous. "It's not her," he said, parroting my own words back to me with a hollow conviction. "It can't hurt you. It just talks." He was trying to convince himself as much as me. I'll send for you." Once I get settled, he left that afternoon, and I was alone, truly alone, in the house with the thing that wore my mother's voice like a suit. Its behavior changed immediately. With my father gone, the last pretense of subtlety vanished. It no longer confined itself to the night. I'd be reading in the living room, and I'd hear her calling me from the top of the stairs. I'd be making a sandwich, and I'd feel a cold hand brush my shoulder, followed by her gentle laughter echoing from the dining room. It was playing with me. The worst was the singing. She used to sing an old lullaby, "Hush, little baby." I'd hear it now, drifting through the heating vents, a soft, haunting melody that would warp and distort, the lyrics sometimes changing. "Hush, little Leo, don't say a word. Mama's gonna eat you, the silly little bird." I stopped leaving my room altogether. I had a stash of canned food and bottled water. I barricaded the door every night, sleeping in fitful bursts, always waiting, always listening. The climax came on a night when a thick, soupy fog had rolled in, swallowing the house whole. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional distant drip of a faucet I knew I'd turned off. I was lying in bed, the wedged doorstop firmly in place, the baseball bat beside me. Then, the house phone rang. The sound was so jarring, so anachronistic, that I jerked upright. Nobody called the landline anymore. It rang again, shrill and demanding. A cold dread filled me. I knew, with a certainty that was bone deep, who it was. It rang a third time, a fourth. On the fifth ring, the answering machine in the kitchen clicked on. I heard my own voice, from years ago, reciting the message. "You've reached the Harlow family. We can't come to the phone right now." The beep cut through the silence. And then, her voice. But it was wrong. It was broken, static-laced, like a recording played on a damaged tape deck. It was the voice of the thing, but stripped of its careful imitation, revealing the raw, hungry entity beneath. "Leo," it hissed, the static crackling. So alone, in the house, let me in. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop. "The door is just wood," it whispered through the machine. "The voice is just sound. Let me in, my sweet boy." Then the line went dead. The silence that followed was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. It was a waiting silence, a hunting silence. I don't know how much time passed, maybe minutes, maybe an hour. I was paralyzed, curled into a ball on my bed, listening to the frantic hammering of my own heart. Then I heard the footsteps on the stairs. They were slow, deliberate. Thump, drag, thump, drag. Not the soft shuffle from before. This was the sound of something heavy, something that wasn't used to having a physical form, laboring its way up. Each step was a monumental effort, and each one brought it closer to my door. Thump, drag, thump, drag. It reached the top of the stairs. The footsteps started down the hall. I could hear the floorboards groaning under a weight they were never meant to bear. Thump, drag, thump, drag. It stopped outside my door. I could hear it breathing. It wasn't the soft sigh from the beginning. It was a wet, rasping sound, like lungs full of mud. The smell hit me then, a sweet, cloying odor of damp earth and rotting flowers, the scent of a freshly opened grave. The doorknob began to jiggle. It turned slowly, left, then right, the old brass mechanism grinding in protest. The wedge I'd placed held firm. A low, guttural growl rumbled from the other side of the door, a sound no human vocal cords could ever produce. Then, the knocking started. It wasn't a knock of request. It was a knock of demand. A hard, solid bang that made the door shudder in its frame. Bang. Leo. The voice was a distorted roar, her voice stretched over a core of pure hatred. Bang. Let me in. Bang. The wood around the latch began to splinter. I saw a crack appear. I scrambled back, pressing myself against the headboard, the baseball bat held uselessly in my sweaty hands. "You're not my mother," I screamed, my voice a ragged, pathetic thing. The pounding stopped. The rasping breathing ceased. The silence was sudden and absolute. And then, her voice returned. It was perfect again. Soft, gentle, filled with a love so profound, it broke my heart all over again. It was the voice from my childhood, the voice that promised safety, the voice of home. "I know, my sweet boy," it whispered through the crack in the door. The sound was intimate, as if its lips were pressed against the splintered wood. "But I have her voice, and you have nowhere else to go. So open the door. Let me tell you a story. Let me sing you a song. Let me in, Leo. I'm so lonely." The tears were streaming down my face now. It was using the one thing I could never resist, the one thing I craved more than food or water or air. It was offering me my mother back. My hand trembled. A part of me, the desperate, grieving little boy, wanted to do it, to just open the door and let the sound wash over me, to pretend, even for a moment, that she was back. But the other part, the survivor, knew the truth. It wasn't offering a reunion. It was offering a coffin. "No," I whispered. The voice on the other side of the door changed. The love evaporated, replaced by a cold, ancient, and infinite malice. "Then I will learn to wait," it said, its voice dropping to a sub-audible hum that vibrated in my bones. I have learned her voice. "I will learn your fears. I will learn the sound of your heartbeat as it slows and stops. I am a patient being, little bird, and this is my nest now." I heard the thump drag recede, moving back down the hall, and then down the stairs. It's been 6 months. My father never sent for me. I think he's too scared to even remember I exist. I'm still here, in this house. I never leave my room. The door is reinforced with brackets and screws, but I know it's just wood. The thing is still here. It doesn't try to break down the door anymore. It's learning. It's learned that constant low-level terror is more effective than a frontal assault. It talks to me all day now. It tells me things only my mother could know. The secret name I had for my first-grade teacher. The location of a lost locket I'd sworn I'd never told anyone about. It sings the lullaby perfectly now. No distorted lyrics. It asks me about my day in her voice, with her inflections. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, I hear it crying. It's a perfect imitation of the sound my mother made when she got the diagnosis. A raw, hopeless, gut-wrenching sob, It's learning how to manipulate grief. I don't know what it is. A ghost, a mimic, a thing from between the cracks of reality. I only know two things for certain. First, it is not my mother. And second, it is learning to sound like me. Last week, I heard my own voice calling to me from the basement. Help! I'm down here. I'm hurt. It was getting better. It's only a matter of time before it's perfect. It's learning. It's always learning. And when it has learned every sound a human being can make, when it has mastered every note of love and fear and despair that echoes in this house, I don't know what it will do then, but I know I will open the door, not because I want to, but because I will have forgotten what any other choice feels like, because its voice will be the only thing left in the world, and it will sound like home, and it will be waiting.